and welcome to the Kickstarter campaign for SCP-Heretic, a short horror film. Our story takes place within the world of SCP, a universe where reality-defying entities and phenomena, known as anomalies, are sought out by a number of shadowy organizations, most notably the SCP Foundation. They are a top-secret, non-governmental organization that obtains these anomalies in order to secure, study, and keep them hidden from the public eye, all in the name of public security. This is an esoteric world, where the mundane only exists because of secretive battles fought to maintain this masquerade, but behind the facade, eldritch abominations and maddening truths lurk in waiting. This universe was created on a website known as the SCP Wiki, and has grown into a colossal community of readers, writers, and creatives of many different practices. It has also served as the basis for our previous films, Dollhouse and Overlord, which focused primarily on the Foundation's paramilitary forces. This brings us to what we have in store for you this time around. In this final installment of our SCP series, we will be following a field agent of the SCP Foundation, tasked with going undercover inside one of the cells of a collective known as Are We Cool Yet?, a widespread group that uses anomalies to create paranormal works of art. This particular cell of the group, however, has begun to take on practices of a religious dimension, which they believe will lead them to divine knowledge. Assisting in this operation is MTF Pi 1, who will serve as a quick reaction force in the event of a crisis. Our primary goal is to deliver a thematically interesting and mind-bending film with cosmic horror as its focus, featuring a strong contrast between the grounded normal world and a bizarre hidden reality. At the center of this will be a deeply emotional, character-driven story. Like our films before, the SCPs featured here will not be based on anything from the wiki, but we will be pulling multiple other elements from the universe in order to remain in touch with the setting. The narrative takes influence from many different places, more overtly from H.P. Lovecraft, but also from the works of David Lynch, Junji Ito, and most of all from video games like Silent Hill. This story will also feature many works of art for both narrative and production design purposes, drawing heavily from the works of Francis Bacon, Zdzisław Beksiński, Masahiro Ito, Stephen Gammell, and Yuko Tatsushima. Cinematography will feature a mix of natural light for the normal everyday environments and more vibrant and otherworldly lighting choices in the setting of the cult to create a dynamic and surreal atmosphere. I've been doing videos now for roughly a decade, with experience primarily in writing, editing, sound design, and music. All of these skills will once again be put to use in the creation of this film. You can find all of my work on my channel, with my latest film being SCP Overlord.
My name is Stephen Hancock, and I have over 12 years of experience as a director, cinematographer, and editor, and I will be shooting and directing SCP-Heretic. Most of my duties on this film are going to be planning out the shots, working with their production designers, lighting technicians, and grips, but also making sure that our actors deliver authentic performances. My most recent work can be found on Evan Royalty's channel, with my latest film being SCP Overlord.
Hi, my name is Clay Obley, and I've been a professional VFX and CG artist for 10 years. I've worked on a couple SCP shorts of my own, including the 096 short film, which I directed. I also did the VFX for SCP Overlord. I'll be handling the bulk of the visual effects for SCP-Heretic in both 2D compositing and 3D effects.
Hi, my name is Daniel Roden Clark, also known as After Infinity, and I'll be reprising my role as lead composer for SCP-Heretic. I've been making music and doing soundtracks for over 6 years now. Some of my recent work includes the animation series Songs of War, and of course SCP Overlord. So I'll be composing some of the key musical score for SCP-Heretic, making sure we nail that unique, tense brand of cinematic atmosphere the film requires. I'll also be working on things like Foley and dialogue editing, post-sound tasks that make sure we get crisp and clear audio for each and every scene.
Any mobile task force members featured will also be played exclusively by United States Armed Forces veterans, with exceptions only to major speaking roles that require trained actors. Experienced military technical advisors will also be on set to provide a genuine sense of authenticity to the tactics presented on screen. All other crews, such as our technicians and production designers, also come from experienced backgrounds, and will be helping boost our production values far and above what's expected of an online film production. Given this is our final SCP film, we're going big, and as such, the proceeds will be going to a lot of things. Now, because there's far too many expenses for me to explain one at a time, I'm just going to throw up a list of our primary ones on screen. While this doesn't cover all that we're going to need to pay for, it should illustrate that this is going to be a colossal effort. But none of these really illustrate what our biggest and most important expense is, which is time. Time has been the biggest factor in how we've made our films previously, and has been one of our largest obstacles. The principal photography for both Dollhouse and Overlord was just about under a week, and we were rushing through scenes constantly, blending shots together and making mistakes we were forced to fix in post. In order to avoid this entirely, we need time to get everything right, especially in a story that is going to be heavily reliant on delivering great performances. Working on SCP content has shown me that this community is one of the most prolific and dedicated in the world, and we want this film to be a send-off that expresses that. We want to show people the best that the SCP community can produce and set the benchmark not just for SCP, but for all online content going forward. We hope you can help us achieve this dream. If you are unable to contribute financially, sharing either this video or our Kickstarter page would more than suffice. Thank you so much for your time, and as always, take care.